Welcome to a new Scuderia Ferrari racing news. Silverstone is a very important race for Ferrari, who aims to confirm the improvements done. It's not a track that in theory favors the Scuderia, who will try to do its best. Let's listen to Fernando and Felipe.
Well, the last three races were very important for us. I think we were very competitive. In fact, I think it's the best three races of the championship so far for us. So we know the characteristics of Monaco, Canada, Valencia maybe suit our car, but definitely it's important to fight for the podium, fight for victories after a difficult start of the season. And for the engineers, for the team, for the drivers, we approach next Grand Prix with a better motivation. I think Silverstone can be a good race for us to know and to test exactly where we are and how competitive we can be. I think Silverstone is not our ideal track in terms of the layout and the characteristics of the circuit, and I think it will be good to know what we can do, and we need to make sure that we need to be prepared for any circumstances. We know Silverstone, it can rain, it can change conditions every day, and we need to be ready to exploit that. And I think we are bringing some new parts for the car, so we are hoping a good performance in Silverstone. I think Silverstone, you need a car that is very good and very quick on the high-speed corners. All about Silverstone is these high-speed corners, and you need to set up the car to be perfectly in that area, not only with aerodynamics that are very important, but also with the suspension and the setup itself. So I think you need a very stable car there, and you need, as we said now, be ready for any rain possibility that may come in Silverstone, and you need to have a quick car also in wet conditions. Yeah, I think it's some way our most difficult race, if we were talking about football wars or things like that, because we are racing like in the home Grand Prix for many of our opponents. I think in England are based 90% of the teams, so when we are there, we know that in terms of logistics, etc., it's very easy for our opponents, and we need to travel with all the equipment. So it feels like that, but this is another reason to do well there. No notice of the crowd. I think it's very difficult to see the grandstands when you are in the car, but I saw some replays, some image on TV, and yeah, people were very happy when we overtook Webber, obviously on the track, but also very happy when we overtook him on the pit stop in the last part of the race. And in general, the Valencia weekend, I think it was good for the Spanish fans, good atmosphere in the race, but also outside the race there were some activities to do, and it was great. And the final podium, I think, make everybody happy, so we are happy as well. Yeah, the curves in Silverstone, we know that in terms of recharge, in terms of gaining all the energy on braking is not the easiest place, or maybe the most difficult of the championship. The reason is that there are not heavy brakings on Silverstone, there are not many time on the brakes, because there are all these fluid high-speed corners, so it's a difficult one for us. But we are running a very efficient system at the moment, and we believe that in Silverstone will be also no problems for us. Well, after 8 races, we have to know that Formula 1 changed in a bit of how we approach the Grand Prix, how the strategy changed, how the qualifying is changed as well, because maybe it's not as important as it was last year. But I think the fans, they love this, and the new Formula 1, waiting until the last laps to see who is winning races, etc., make Formula 1 more interesting. So I think all the things that they've been asking for the Pirelli tires are there. So we see a better show, and the tires are behaving very well in all the races with no problems at all. So we are happy. We know that there are some difference between some of the compounds that for teams are better, for some of the teams are worse, but the tires are the same for everybody, so you just need to make the car working for that specific tire in terms of setup or things, whatever you need, and we are working on that. So at the moment it's quite interesting and quite good.
Well, I hope we can have a similar direction in what we had in the last 3 races. We had a competitive car. Silverstone is a completely different track than these 3 past races that we did. We have also the hard tires, and I expect really to carry on in the same direction, you know, fighting for a good lap time in the qualifying, in the race, and I think if we have a competitive weekend in Silverstone, means the job done in the last 3 races was good and we progressed the car. I think that's the direction we need to focus on this track, and I hope we have a good race in Silverstone as well. Well, I think the atmosphere is good. Everybody was working very hard in the last 3 races actually, and I think, you know, people know the direction to follow, know the direction to work in the car, in some details, strategies, pit stop, and I think that is a good direction to carry on like that, and I hope we can have even a better result and I hope even the best result for the season in Silverstone. I think if we are competitive in Silverstone, means the job was well done and the people becomes even more excited. Well, I hope we have a good result with the soft and the hard tires in Silverstone, and the tires is, you know, in the similar to everybody, so I hope we can make it work in our car and we can be competitive, and definitely if we are competitive in Silverstone, means the job was well done in the last race to improve the car, and that's the direction to carry on even to the next races. Well, it's true that we're going to a track that you have a lot of English teams, you have some English drivers, and but anyway, Ferrari is Ferrari. So everywhere we go, we have a lot of fans, a lot of tifosi, everybody on red and pushing for us. So we always go to whatever track thinking about the victory, thinking about the best result, and that's exactly the same going to Silverstone, to England, and I'm sure we have a lot of power as well, a lot of pushing from the people to do a good job. Well, Silverstone is a different track. It's very high speed corners, which is important to have a good car with a good downforce for the high speed corners. It's also quite difficult from the physical point of view for the neck of the drivers, because you have a lot of high speed corners, which you have, the body has a lot of G-force in the corners, so that's why we're training even more our necks, and that's the nice track. You have even some slow corners, change of direction important, and but it's a track that you need definitely a good downforce.
Last week, the world champion John Surtees was in Maranello. We met him for an exclusive interview.
Let's go!
It brings back, you know, largely I think I must remember the words of Mr. Ferrari when I saw him not long before he died, and he said, "John, we must remember the good times and not the mistakes." So when I come back, I try and remember all the good times and the friends and the feelings and passion that all existed in that time for me. So yes, it's a very changed Maranello, but it's still very special. I think the same qualities of a driver at the top end of the scale has been the same through the ages. I think whether you go along and say, Nuvolari at one time, or you come along and you talk of my period, or today, Alonso period, the same ingredients and requirements regarding the mentality, the approach, the competitiveness is important. And the other thing is, Mr. Ferrari always said, I like driver with fire in the belly. Fire in the belly. This is important. And I think that's why he also liked motorcyclists. it is a tool. It is a tool that you give the driver a tool, and he has to use it. But I think there's good and bad from it. The safety factor with modern technology is fantastic. You've got to remember, you sat in a car like this and you were sitting in a fuel tank with just tubes around you. Those days are past, and you are now sitting in a safety cell. I think that the drivers of today are privileged to be able to sit in a car and drive the car at 100% for all the race. Largely in my time, you had to compromise. You had to think, the temperature is going up here, the oil pressure is dropping here, the brakes are doing this. It was an earlier age. And so, yes, I mean, if I could switch off some years from my age, I'd still love to drive one of the new cars. Valentino, I spoke to him and we were talking when the change of formula, and also when he came along and drove a Ferrari, because I think he did a lot of laps here on this circuit. Yes, and I'm watching this year because now he's on an Italian machine with a Ducati. It's of great interest. I think that the biggest thing which is the impression is how Modena and Maranello, all, of course, in my time, Maserati was no longer racing itself, but you had this tremendous passion for the motorsport. And when you came out to Maranello, it was as you came into the kingdom of Ferrari. You seemed as if you were meeting there, and that passion and emotion, which when you were successful was so pleasing, and when you weren't successful was a little depressing, is something which I remember very much. And still today, I know many of the people, and my old chief mechanic, Giulio Bossari, came to England for us about a year ago, and I remember, as Mr. Ferrari said to me, the good times and not the mistakes. That was what we tried to do. The sad thing is that we should have won some more together, but that was not to be. But no, that was a result of putting together a new team, and the new team came together and we got results. It's unfortunate that it didn't continue. The most important factor is that you've got to have it in your heart. You've got to have that internal passion to drive you forward. It is not a question of, a racing driver gets a lot of money or anything like this. It must be a passion to come together with a machine, for the machine to talk to you and you to talk to it, so that you can get the maximum performance from it and the results. That will look after itself if you get the job done. The important thing is that you have this dedication to working with your team and coming together as one with your machine.
Silverstone is one of the most traditional and challenging tracks in Formula One world. Marc Genet explains us the driving on it and the layout.
Yeah, the British Grand Prix is, drivers like me that we've raced in England for a long time, is like the home of motorsport, Silverstone. A circuit with some corners that are absolutely classic, like Copse. Beckett's, to me, is one of the nicest sections you can find in when driving a Formula One car. You've never feel so much high-speed corners one after the other. Downforce there is very important. You need a lot of downforce for that track, as much as you can have, even though it's a very high-speed track. And Formula One has been there since 1950, so it's a classic, and we are all happy to go there year after year because the fans there are also great.
And that was all for this time. See you at the next Racing News.